Every evening, my neighbor digs a hole and says he's planting memories. I live in a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of town. You know the kind. Everyone knows each other's business, but pretends not to. The mailman still whistles. Kids ride their bikes until the street lights flicker on, and the smell of grilled meat and freshly mowed lawns fills the air on weekends. But my street has one oddity. My neighbor, Mr. Harlan. He's in his late 60s, retired from something. Though I've never figured out what. His house is perfectly maintained, not a single paint chip or cracked shingle. The lawn is so neat it looks vacuumed. But what gets everyone talking isn't his house. It's what he does every single evening, right at sunset. He digs holes, always in his backyard, always at the same time. And when someone asks, he just smiles and says, "I'm planting memories." The first time I noticed it, I was walking my dog, Jasper. We passed by his fence, that tall wooden one that creaks if you even look at it, and I heard the sound of shoveling. Slow, steady, shh, thud, shh, thud. I peeked through a gap in the boards. There he was, wearing an old flannel shirt, jeans, and a wide-brimmed hat. The sun was setting behind him, turning everything gold. He was knee-deep in a hole. I didn't see what he was burying, just the movement of his hands. Deliberate and careful, as if he were tucking something small and fragile into the dirt. Then he patted the soil down and whispered something I couldn't make out. That night, I told my wife about it. She just laughed. Maybe he's planting flowers or something. But flowers don't need to be buried a foot deep. The digging continued. Every night, right at dusk, sometimes I'd see him carrying a box or a jar. Once, it looked like a small wooden chest. He'd never stop before the sun touched the horizon, and he'd always finish before it was completely dark. After a few weeks, I started keeping track. He never missed a single evening, rain or shine. Once during a thunderstorm, I saw him out there in a yellow raincoat, the lightning flashing behind him as he dug. The ground was practically mud, but he didn't care. He just kept going, shovel slicing through the earth like it was the most important thing in the world. That's when curiosity got the better of me. I decided to talk to him. One evening, as he was finishing up, I leaned over the fence and called out, "Evening, Mr. Harlan. What are you planting there?" He looked up, smiling that same polite smile. His eyes were pale blue, too pale, almost like the color had drained out of them. "Memories," he said, brushing dirt off his gloves. "They grow better in the dark." Then he winked, turned, and went inside. I laughed it off at first, but the phrasing stuck with me. They grow better in the dark. What did that even mean? The next day, I brought it up to some of the neighbors. Most just shrugged. Mrs. Delaney across the street said, "Oh, that's just old Harlan. He's harmless. Lost his wife a few years ago. Maybe it's his way of coping." That made sense, kind of. Maybe he buried mementos, love letters, photos, stuff like that. But there was something about the regularity of it that felt off. It wasn't grieving behavior. It was ritual. And then there was the smell. One morning, around mid-July, I noticed it, a faint, earthy smell, like wet leaves and something sour beneath. It drifted from his yard, carried by the breeze. I told myself it was probably fertilizer or compost. Still, Jasper refused to go near the fence that week. He'd growl low in his throat whenever we passed by. That same night, I saw something new. Harlan wasn't digging. He was watching the ground. He had a lawn chair set up beside one of the old holes, flashlight in hand, just sitting there. I watched from my upstairs window, half hidden behind the curtain. Around midnight, he stood, leaned forward, and smiled. I swear to God, something moved in that patch of soil. It could have been an animal, sure, a raccoon or mole or whatever, but the way he reacted, he didn't seem startled. He seemed pleased, like he'd been waiting for it. I told myself I was imagining things, but the next morning, when I passed by the fence, there were small depressions in the dirt, circular, like something had pushed up from underneath. And in the middle of one of them, I saw something shiny. It was a photograph, half covered in dirt. I picked it up. It was water damaged, faded, but I could make out two people, a young man and woman, laughing in front of a house that looked exactly like his. On the back, in neat handwriting, Summer, 1978, our first home. I slipped it into my pocket before anyone saw. Later, when I looked more closely, I noticed something even stranger. The man in the photo wasn't quite Harlan. The hair was darker, face smoother, but the eyes were unmistakable. That same washed-out blue. The woman, she looked almost familiar. That night, I stayed up again, watching from the window. Harlan came out at sunset, carrying another small box. He dug in a different spot this time, closer to the fence. His movements seemed slower, weaker. When he finished, he didn't go inside right away. He just stood there, whispering into the ground. I cracked my window open. I could barely hear it. Don't forget me this time. Then he covered the hole, patted it down, and left. By this point, I knew I should have just left it alone, but the curiosity had turned into something sharper. Fear, maybe. I started wondering what would happen if I dug one of the spots back up. Just one. So I did. It was 2 nights later. I waited until he went to bed, lights off. Around midnight, I climbed over the fence with a flashlight and a small shovel. The ground was soft, fresh. I started digging where I'd seen him last. The dirt smelled thick, old. About a foot down, my shovel hit something solid. A jar, glass, sealed with wax. Inside was a folded piece of paper. I held it up to the light. The paper was yellowed, fragile. I could barely make out the words through the glass. But I recognized the handwriting, the same as on the photo. It said, "For when I start forgetting." That's when I heard it, the creak of the back door. I froze. The porch light flicked on, and there he was, standing there in his bathrobe, eyes bright, even in the dark. "You shouldn't be here," he said quietly. I stammered something about my dog, about hearing noises, but he just smiled. Not angry, just tired. "You don't understand," he said. "They don't stay unless I remind them." He walked over slowly, kneeling beside the disturbed dirt. His hands shook as he touched the edge of the hole. "Every time I start to forget, I plant what's left, so I can remember her a little longer." He looked up at me, and there was something broken in his expression. But lately the memories don't stay buried. I backed away, muttering an apology, and climbed the fence as fast as I could. The next morning, I went to his house, to check on him, or maybe to apologize. But the door was open, and the place was empty. No furniture, no pictures, nothing. The backyard looked different, too. Every single patch of disturbed dirt was gone, smoothed over, grass perfectly even, like no one had ever dug there at all. And in the middle of the yard, right where the newest hole had been, was a single object. That photograph, the one I'd taken, except this time, there was a third person standing next to them. Me.